This episode is proudly supported by Powerhouse Parramatta.
Powerhouse Parramatta will open in 2025. The new museum will be the largest in New South Wales and is determined to offer the very best in hospitality. Perhaps your business can be part of defining a food and beverage offering which is expected to cater to 2 million visitors a year. This incredible opportunity for operators includes retail food and beverage, in-house residential catering, events and other hospitality ventures, encapsulating the diversity of cuisines and cultures that make Western Sydney so exciting. Interested to learn more? Powerhouse invites food and beverage operators to a briefing on Tuesday, 8th of August. For more information and to register for this exclusive briefing, go to powerhouse.com.au.
I'd like to acknowledge Australia's First Nation people as the traditional custodians of the land, and for this episode in particular, the Kulin Nation. I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging.
Make your vermouth out of excellent wine and, you're starting from a really good spot. This delicacy and power and it's, loads and loads of levels. It's incredible vermouth.
This is Over a Glass. I'm Shanteh Wale.
Dave Verheul is an acclaimed chef that has broadened his reach into the world of artisan vermouths. Saison Aperitifs are more than seasonal aromatized wines. They are bright, lively drinks designed to be drunk accompanying a meal or paired alongside the ebbs and flows of life. Hi Dave, thanks for joining me.
Hi Shanteh, thanks for having me.
Oh, it's lovely to have you on. Welcome back to the network. The last time you were here, you spoke to Huck about kind of how Saison got started, and it was right in that challenging time of post-pandemic. We're close to a year on. How are you travelling?
Yeah, I mean, that seems like so long ago now. It's, Thankfully, we're miles away from the depths of a metro Melbourne lockdown. So, yeah, things are great. Thank you.
Good. It is nice to be out doing things and for everything to be kind of, the cogs to be turning again. I want to talk about Saison Aperitifs because they've been instrumental, I think, in the conversation around vermouth in Australia, and they're just bloody delicious, delicious drinks. Tell me a little bit about what vermouth is and kind of your approach to starting out your own brand.
Firstly, thank you. That's really kind, and it's nice to kind of be included in that conversation with so many incredible other Australian producers. Vermouth essentially, as you said, is aromatized wine. So, a wine that's been fortified and made bitter with one specific herb called wormwood. So, everywhere in the world, to be a vermouth, you have to have wormwood, apart from in the US, where it just needs to look and feel like vermouth, interestingly. For me, this kind of journey started years ago. I'm a chef by trade. And chefs love a drink after service to make everything better. You start with beer. As your palate evolves, you move on to wine, and then your palate evolves further. And I'm really drawn to bitter flavors. I love radicchios and all of that kind of side of the food world. So bitter drinks for me was a no-brainer. So we originally started maybe 6 years ago, making some vermouth and pretty bad ones, to be fair, in the restaurant and serving them with desserts. As they got better, we'd make things like a vermouth out of all parts of the cherry, so the fruit, the stone, the leaves, the wood, and all of that, and then we'd kind of finish it off and then bottle it and then age it or forget about it for a whole year and then serve it with a cherry dish the following year. So it kind of started from there with me. I'd always had an idea in the back of my head that I'd really love to kind of bring it to market and just see how it went. And, I've got a fairly kind of odd outlook on flavor, I think. It's not super normal, and I wasn't quite sure how it would work, but Lockdown obviously kind of gave me the time and the space and just the mental capacity, I guess, to be able to kind of work through what it was going to take to actually get it into a bottle and onto a shelf.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine that it's such a journey from the moment you go, oh, I think I might like to dabble in that, to bottling something and getting it out there to market. But tell me, you said, you had an odd outlook on flavour. I want to know a little bit about you. You liked bitter drinks. Were you in the kind of Fernet Branca kind of bitter drinks? Were you more on how bitter are we talking? And was there a first kind of vermouth that you tried where you went, wow, this is an amazing drink?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't so much into the Fernets back then, but I very much am so now. I think my gateway kind of bitter drink of choice was Cocky Americano Bianco, which is just, in my mind, is still one of my favorite drinks. It's just, it's sunny, warm, and complex, and just, it has so many kind of levels to it. I find it fascinating.
Yeah, that's so interesting, because I wondered often because a lot of chefs really do like bitter drinks, and I always used to think, where did that come about? I mean, is that from going through your parents' pantry and kind of coming across some kind of random vermouth that's been sitting in there for a long time? Because that's not normally a good experience. But Cocky's an interesting one and a delicious drink. So that's a great first drink.
Yeah, I think the chef's love of bitter drinks comes from Fernet Branca shots. So, you spend all night tasting salty or salted and savory food. Your palate just needs a refresher. So it needs something sweet, and it needs something just really opposite to what you've been testing all night. You just get a little bit of palate fatigue. And once you kind of have something like that, it just kind of cleans you out. And that's what they're originally intended to do in that category as well.
Yeah. Well, that gives me a little bit more kind of scope of how you do reset your palate. So that makes a lot of sense. I thought kind of refreshing beer, but this is kind of the shock to the system that you need.
Yeah.
With vermouths, we see such a large range, from ancient Greece, where they kind of started, all the way into the kind of 1850s, where they gathered momentum in the industry, and they started becoming a kind of drink mixer. When I think of vermouths and tradition, I think either the French kind of, kind of dry styles, or I think of the Italian more kind of spice and bitter kind of styles. When you launched Saison, where did you want to fall within those categories?
Yeah, that's a good question. So in my mind, there wasn't a lot of seasonality within alcohol. Obviously, yes, there is with wine, but not so much on the spirit side. So, coming from my background, that's how my mind worked. And the idea that always was originally was that, you're drinking something that's, match palate weight to the season that you're in. So it's light and flowery and bright in summertime, and deeper and richer and more kind of, bolder in the wintertime. And that's just the way that my mind works. So that was the plan from the outset. I love sweet vermouth, so I make sweet vermouth. Dry vermouth in a martini is an excellent thing, but it's not particularly what I want to make. I'll leave it to other people to do that. Sweet vermouth wise, a lot of the Euro ones, while there's so much beauty in all of that, I wanted to do something very different. And the way that a lot of the Euro vermouths, especially kind of the Spanish and Italian varieties, there's a lot of caramel, there's a lot of kind of warm spices. And when you combine them with quite a lot of age, it creates, and it sounds funny, but it creates a kind of almost like a brown kind of downward palette. Whereas I wanted mine to be kind of brighter and more kind of upward. So we don't use any spice. We don't really use any caramel. And we just try and craft things out of actual fresh ingredients first, dried second, and some of the roots and forms of spice after that. So it's just a kind of a different way of doing it. I wanted them to be brighter and fresher.
Well, they definitely achieved that. And I think what for me, the first experience of drinking your saisons was that I kind of thought, is this vermouth or is this just, what is this? Because it didn't really fit what I imagined of some of these vermouths. And the more I drank them, the more I thought, whatever it is, it's a really good drink. And I actually came across them in a blind tasting in some judging. So I was just like, whatever this is right here in front of me is something I want to put in my mouth again. It's just so delicious.
Oh, that's great to hear. No, it's a funny thing. I mean, vermouth as a category, so many people know it, but so many people's association with drinking a vermouth is, like you said earlier, it's that dusty old bottle of Cinzano sitting in the back of your parents' cupboard. And, it is still essentially at its base level a wine product. So, you leave it in a cupboard for 6 months and it's going to go flat or slightly oxidize and just not be a great experience. So I think if you can get the balance right between, paying homage to the wine that's actually made out of what it's flavored with, bitterness and sweetness, it can be a really refreshing to drink on its own. And, it's not something as a category that has been drunk solo for very long. So I think that's still quite a new way of kind of approaching the category.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I wish if anyone takes anything away from this other than that they should drink your drinks, is that please stop leaving those vermouths, in the cupboard. They belong in the fridge and they really need to be bought just like you go and buy fresh limes before you go get margaritas. You buy your vermouths fresh and you drink them fresh. I can't stress that enough. But I want to talk a little bit about when you released Fallen Quinces. We think about vermouth, base wine, then we're looking at your flavoring. So whether it be Artemisia or say wormwood, and then, your spices or your fruits, and then your spirit, which is fortifying your wine. How did you build the flavor profile of Fallen Quinces?
I think in my mind, all the flavors, they work together. So like quince, blood orange, saffron, bay leaf, things like that. They're all very very friendly. For me, I think the flavor is where my kind of skill set and my work experience kind of lies. Building the quince was just trying to figure out ways of just putting layers and layers and layers of harmonious flavors together. So, the freshness and the aromatics that a raw quince has that basically completely change when you cook it. And then the beauty of quince that's been cooked for a very long time, and then, adding some quinces that have been cooked for a very long time and then burnt through a red gum fired wood oven that we have at the restaurant, just to kind of add in just different layers of bitterness. So you just try and create something that has, depth, has brightness, but it has depth and length.
I think it's quite amazing because I've said for a long time that even when it comes to wine, that chefs, they don't realize the ability they have when it comes to detecting aromas and also in just describing flavors. It's such a strength, and it's something that you, like you said, it comes incredibly natural to you. But for somebody else going in saying, create a spirit, that would be really intimidating. So you're really playing to your strengths there and looking for things that make sense. And when you read through the ingredients of Fallen Quinces, in my mind, I'm like, yes, yes, yes. That's genius. That's incredible. Rather than saying, yep, let's just add a caramel, you're going, yep, let's use kind of caramelized quince sugar and then put it back over the burnt quinces. It makes sense.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And further kind of I go along this process, you get better at getting true flavors from all of the ingredients, because all of the ingredients that we use are all natural. So, nature is variable. So it's not like this is dried, it's going to be the same every time, or this comes from a flavor company house and it's going to be exactly the same every time. You have to figure out ways to get the most flavor out of that year's produce, and then balance it as well.
Tell me a little bit about Fallen flowers, because, is choosing a base wine, important in terms of starting out that something like Fallen Flavors? You use Moscato for that, I believe.
I use Moscato for all of them as a base. It's Muscat Rouge grape. Solely, that really comes from the Cocky Americano Rosa and Bianco. So those two bitter wines, they're made with Moscato d'Asti base. So for me, it's Moscato gets a bad rap in Australia for a few reasons, but it's at the base level of it. It's a wine that speaks of the sunshine, like it's warm and it's quite friendly. So when you start with something that has a really low ABV and a high residual sugar like that, it means you can put a lot of flavour into it via your spirit infusions and tinctures, but also you don't have to sweeten it too much. So that's where that came from.
Yeah, like one of, I think, if not the most traditional variety to use. So yeah, completely love your choice on that. Your botanicals that you're either grown for you or they are sourced from local organic producers. Who are you working with in conjunction with your products?
We've used a number of farms around Victoria for the restaurant. I've been in Melbourne for 10 years, so that whole time. So we source from them. We also have through the restaurant like a network of kind of individual small producers. Like I have a guy that picks elderflower for me every year, and this guy does unripe walnuts and walnut leaves, and just a whole bunch of them. I pick some things myself as well. So we try to work with good people and directly with farmers, so that everything that we spend goes directly from us to the farm, and that speaks to the restaurant as well. We've always tried to kind of develop those direct connections with the people who are actually producing your food. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, I mean, you're in a position where you have really great contacts, but you're also super conscious of taking care of the people that you're utilizing, the farmers and growers, which is so wonderful. And we all should be more considerate of who we're working with. I'm interested to know, what have you learned a bit about the drink business that you didn't know maybe beforehand as a chef?
God, so many things. So many things. I think the main thing would be it's so much more fun doing an away event as a drinks person rather than a chef. As a chef, you walk into someone's kitchen, you don't know where anything is, and you spend a couple of days just absolutely in the weeds to do an event. Whereas now I can turn up, I can make sure things are cold. I put some pour nozzles on, and we're off. So yeah, that would be the best thing.
I mean, it kind of scares me how well you do your job, because it makes me think like, gosh, do we need bartenders? Do we need sommeliers anymore? If chefs have got this, innate ability with flavors, maybe they're just going to, start taking over, and we won't need everybody else in the business. But, what else do you tend to have learnt over the time in terms of kind of going out into market and trying to launch a product?
Yeah, I've learnt almost every lesson I think that you could learn the hardest way possible, and I think that's been really formative. Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting moving from a service-based industry into creating a product, and it's been a huge learning curve. Lots and lots of lessons. I think one I figured out recently is, we're talking about the quince. I have a guy lucky enough to have some excellent people in Singapore that sell my stuff over there, and the quince was always, it sells, but it's a little hard to move. But then it actually came out recently that a lot of people in Singapore don't really know what a quince is.
I thought you might say that.
Yeah. Which I just didn't even fathom what. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And then what is it supposed to taste like? Okay, we've heard of, now we've Googled what this weird looking yellow creature is, and but what is it meant to taste like, and is it a good representation of that? It's amazing, even in the world of wine, when you come to tasting notes and you look at people from all over the world, and their frame of reference always comes down to what they eat and drink. And some of the details, you think, I have no idea what they're talking about or what that tastes like, and it makes you want to travel and eat and drink more, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I think we're pretty lucky in Australia. We've got a pretty kind of wide view of food and wine, and a pretty open-minded kind of take on it. So I think we're pretty blessed to be operating and living in Australia that way.
Yeah, I totally agree. How do you kind of foresee your drinks consumed? Do you have an idea of, yes, I want them poured in a wine glass, I want them, experimented with? Do you have ideas for how you want people to use them?
No, I just want people to drink them and have a good time, basically. Most of the vermouths, the flowers, the rhubarb, and the quince, that they're intentionally made to be drunk kind of solo on ice with a little bit of soda or a little bit of tonic or something like that. I think the beauty of that style of those vermouths is that they do love being kind of drunk by themselves. We've just recently put out a kind of a house vermouth, so that's our take on an Italian sweet red style vermouth. So it's meant to be mixed. So it's Moscato and Shiraz wine bases, vanilla, hazelnuts that have been roasted for a really long time, so they almost kind of turn into like a nutty coffee, and then fig leaves that have been smoked, and a couple of other things like that. And that's intended to be, wherever you'd use a sweet red style vermouth, so Negronis, Americanos, Manhattans, all those wonderful things. My skill set isn't mixing, but people do definitely do mix them, which is pretty fun as well.
Yeah, and I think it's nice to know, if you are open to however you'll be nicely surprised when you go in somewhere and someone's done something wacky and weird and turned it into a vapor of some kind, and you're like, sure, why not? But the terms of the rouge style you're talking about, will that stay as a kind of consistent vermouth that you release? Because one of the best things about your drinks is how in demand they are, but it's also one of the worst because it's pretty damn hard to get your hands on a bottle.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's something I kind of battle with, because people do get kind of annoyed that it's not available the whole year round, because some people don't want to have to change their lists or change things so often. But the red house vermouth will be available year round, but everything else is going to stay seasonal.
I think it's a good business move. I mean, it's great to have something, like you said, for mixing, that you can kind of build a cocktail, and if it does well, you can keep it. But at the same time, things might change, and the produce that you had one year may not be available next, and you're going to have to change that recipe. And therefore, like you said, you're true to seasonality, and I think it's great that you're sticking by that.
Yeah, I mean, I only have so much room and so much capability, and once you kind of start moving out of that seasonality, you either make a hell of a lot in one go, which turns into something else entirely, or you start using things that aren't actually true to the season or in season. So there's compromises, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And now, in terms of where Saison is going, is it taking up a lot more time and pulling you away from your stove, or is it a kind of going in the projection that you hoped for?
No, it's going really well. Like, I still managed to kind of split my time between Embla and here. So the original idea was, with the seasonality, with that there were peaks and troughs of workload, kind of similar to almost like a winemaking year. There are times when there's a lot to do, and there's a time when there's not a lot to do. So it still very much works like that. And I love being in the kitchen, and kind of the camaraderie there, and just we have such an excellent team, and the restaurant's really fun. So I still really enjoy the creativity on that side of it as well.
That's great. That's great to hear. What other vermouths do you look for inspiration? Are there other Australian vermouths that you kind of look to enjoy drinking, or in terms of the, international vermouths?
Yeah, I mean, there's some incredible Australian producers. Like the guys at Maiden and I and the guys at Regal Rogue, they've really kind of paved the way for anyone to be able to sell vermouth in Australia in the way that they do these days, I think. Both just incredible drinking vermouths and incredible producers. So that's Australia. Overseas, I really love the vermouth and pretty much anything that the guys at Vegano do in Asti. So, yeah.
Yeah, they've got some, they've got incredible kind of access to, everything, from grape must to everything there. And again, another producer that's kind of hard to get your hands on.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of case in point of, make your vermouth out of excellent wine, and you're starting from a really good spot. But in my mind, in my opinion, he kind of does spice the best. This delicacy and power, and it's loads and loads of levels. It's incredible vermouth.
Vermouth has such an ability to pair well with food, as you know, but I think we're still a little behind where we could be in terms of serving them alongside meals, because like you said, they have the weight so that, you're not looking at something that's super, super alcoholic at 40%. They just have such ability to showcase food right from the start of a meal all the way to the end, don't you think?
Yeah, there's so much versatility. I think if you have a product that is balanced, it's not overly sweet, and it's balanced with flavour and bitterness, there's so many things that you can do with it, especially if you start kind of mixing it down with, tonics and sodas and all the flavour, things roads that you could go down like that. So, yeah, there's loads of options.
Yeah, I'd like to see, a few more maybe dinners as well, just done just to show the capabilities of different vermouths and dishes. Maybe that's something we might see at Embla one day. Who knows? Dave, I'd love to know, if you only could drink 3 drinks for the rest of your life, what would you be having and why?
First one would be an ice cold Peroni red tin on a hot day, because it's super refreshing. Second would be a Negroni. I've drunk a lot of them in the last 6 months testing this house vermouth. So Melbourne Ginko, Campari, like sweet red vermouth with a little bit of Punta Mez. Happy days. And lastly, it'd be the Vegano Luli, which is white Canato, which is just super complex and amazing.
I have never had one of those, but I've actually heard that from a couple of people. And again, that's where that bitter kind of element comes in from you. And I'm going to have to get my hands on some.
Yeah, it's a wild drink. It's just, it's all kind of white-based wine, kind of unroasted Canato, citrus, cardamom, ginger, all these kind of wild things. It's excellent.
Oh, sounds delicious. Dave, it's been thoroughly entertaining and enlightening talking to you. I love the way that you speak about ingredients, and most importantly, I really, really love your drinks. They are delicious. Thank you so much for joining me and the network once again, and best of luck for the upcoming year.
Thanks so much, Shanteh. Have a good day.
This is Over a Glass. I'm Shanteh Wale. Stay tuned for more stories from the world of wine and drinks. Listen in every Thursday on your podcast app. Follow us on Instagram at overaglasspod and contact us at overaglass@deepintheweeds.com.au.